to Thunder Thursday on News OK Live. I'm Miker Sherman, sports editor of the Oklahoman, joined by our roving Thunder coverage team on their way back home from Game 2 in San Antonio. In one car, Thunder beat writers Anthony Slater and Darnell Mayberry. And the other car, columnist Barry Tramel and Jenny Carlson. Jenny's at the wheel, thank goodness, for the columnist car. Darnell Mayberry's behind the wheel. I'm not sure if that's a great thing or a bad thing.
Don't.
For the beat writer car.
I'm just kidding.
Speaking of cars, Thunder Thursday is brought to you by our good friends at Wheeler Chevrolet. Take that drive down I-40, save yourself some time and money. Guys, let's turn to Game 2. Anthony, you had the Power Lunch live chat today, right? Lucky you. After a 35-point loss that was historic in nature, what is the mood of the fan as gauged by the questions and comments on the Power Lunch live chat?
Fire Scott Brooks, trade Russell Westbrook, Sam Presti's out of here, Tavo Cephalosha shouldn't be in the NBA, and some other opinions out there. But it's over in their minds basically, and they're already talking about off season. They're talking about what free agents can we get, how can they do this and that. So I would say characterize it as panic mode. Panic mode might have been after Game 1. Now it's a free for all. They're probably, how are the streets in Oklahoma City? That's what I got to ask you, Mike.
They're not marching on the Thunder practice facility with torches or Chesapeake Energy Arena, as far as we could tell. But it is a little reminiscent to me, Barry, of the return home for us 2 years ago from San Antonio with the Thunder down 2-0. You and I were amused to listen to some sports talk in which, some journalists were recommending that if they lost Game 3, they would need a new coach and a new point guard. Can you contrast the mood that you've been able to detect with the mood in 2012?
It seems like it's a little more pessimistic just because of the nature of the losses. 2012, the Thunder lost a close game to the Spurs in Game 1, and then lost by 9 in Game 2. A good, solid game, but the Spurs had command. But this was 2 blowouts, and last night was historic and embarrassing. Thunder leads by a point or 3 with halfway through the second quarter, and by the middle of the third quarter, it's a total blowout. So I think a lot more pessimism now. The only thing I think, the only difference my fans are with AC, I would say, is they want to fire Westbrook and trade Brooks. So they're open to all suggestions as long as it includes a couple of trips to the guillotine.
Speaking of all suggestions, guys, I sent you an email with my story ideas and suggestions. I know you already got a bunch of good stuff cooked up, but I was wondering if anybody, Barry, you're in the car with Jenny. I tossed out that idea of just airing out all these suggestions and remedies and what have you for the Thunder, and let them see the light of day, air them out a little bit, and see what people think about what they're saying. Is Jenny or anybody biting on that idea?
Well, the best idea we've come up with is Scott Brooks should put 6 men on the court and see if the referees notice. That, to me, would be the best move on defense. That would only clog up the lanes on offense, so I don't have any suggestions on offense. But I don't know that the refs would be ready for a tactic like that. So I would say, especially coming out of timeouts or maybe even in transition, just like hockey, just send a guy out there and see if nobody gets around the county.
Anthony,
Go ahead. How about sending Serge Ibaka to Germany? The plasma treatment that Kobe Bryant got. What do you got? 3-4 days before the next game? I mean, maybe you could get him a transplant calf muscle or something. There's got to be some. I mean, it's 2014. There's got to be something to get him back on the court.
Well, as I told Barry this morning, my good friend Ray Olson, 90-year-old guy I meet with once a week, and more often if I'm smart. He's a miracle of modern science, does a lot of reading, only puts good stuff in his body. He's got clipped out an article he wants me to deliver to Sam Presti, which includes all kinds of answers if Sam's interested in getting Serge Ibaka well quick, including the one that Terrell Owens followed to get him ready for that Super Bowl. So I need to get across the street and give that to Sam. I'm sure there's lots of other miracle cures for Serge anyway. I don't know if there's anything to cure what ails the Thunder against the Spurs guys. But Anthony, let me ask you this. Of course it's not over. They're contractually obligated to play at least 2 more games at the Chesapeake Energy Arena. But is this series decided, and why?
It feels over. I mean, just because of the way the first 2 went down, you could almost tell in their postgame last night, Westbrook and Durant, it almost feels like they're out of answers. It almost feels like they're, reserved to the fact that, hey, we're a little helpless at this point. They're not getting a lot of help elsewhere. They're not playing well. We got to talk about the Spurs. The Spurs are playing some of the best basketball I've seen in the last decade, just the last week or so. They look like a far better team than they looked last season when they probably should have won the NBA Finals. So a combination of Thunder not playing well, Thunder are missing a star player. They're adjusting to just losing him, and they're playing against a team that's playing clearly better than everybody else. It's just a recipe that I don't see how it's turned around, really.
Barry, not over, but decided?
I think it's decided. I don't see where the Thunder has an answer for Serge Ibaka's absence. I mean, the defense has been a sieve. They played decent offense in Game 1, terrible offense in Game 2, but the defense has just been totally lax. I don't know how you fix that defense. Everybody's lineup changes are all predicated on offense, but even if they come out and have good offense, they're not going to win playing this kind of defense. And the Thunder has just let Spurs have too many easy shots.
Double heartbreak, back-to-back playoff appearances for the Thunder. Last year it was Russell Westbrook. This year it's Serge Ibaka. What about what's happened in this series and actually happened in the Memphis series last year tells us the answer to this question? Who is more valuable, Russell Westbrook or Serge Ibaka? Anthony?
Oh, I don't know. Because Memphis isn't as good as the Spurs. Remember that Memphis team that the Thunder lose to in 5? They go on and get swept by the Spurs last year. And like I said, I think the Spurs team this year is playing better. So I think Westbrook's a better player. I think Westbrook's still more valuable. I think they're both ridiculously valuable, maybe almost too valuable. Maybe they rely too much on 3 guys on this team. But I still think, Westbrook's a better player, more important to the team. He's the head of the snake, the point guard. I think something you have mentioned, though, is last year they kind of had Reggie Jackson who could, somewhat play that Westbrook-type role, like a poor man's Russell Westbrook. They don't got anyone. Serge Ibaka ain't going to play like that. The Thunder have nobody to replace some of the stuff Ibaka does. So you can make that argument.
Barry, is it a crazy question to even ask whether Ibaka is more valuable than Westbrook?
Well, I don't think it's crazy. I think Westbrook is more valuable. But I do think it's worth talking about. I think we're seeing Ibaka's value here. This is a wonderful lesson for everyone who just looks at box scores or even advanced statistics that defense matters. Defense is 50% of the game. Ibaka changes the game on defense, and the Thunder is lost without him. So the truth of the matter is the Thunder's not going to win any big series without both of those guys the way they're currently constructed. So they got to have them both, and they just got to hope that what Hubie Brown calls snake eyes doesn't come up again next postseason. This is 2 years in a row the playoffs have been ruined by injury.
Guys, let's go on to the sidelines and the coaching matchup. Of course, Scott Brooks is a frequent target of criticism here in Oklahoma City, even nationally during the playoffs. But I wonder, as we look at this series and the matchups, is the biggest matchup favoring San Antonio the coaching matchup? Anthony?
Yeah, I probably think so. And it's not just this series and adjustments in this series. It's just the system that Greg Popovich has built, the way that team runs, the way it doesn't rely on anyone. Tim Duncan will be sitting for 12, 15 minutes and you won't even notice, and everything moves so much differently. So I think it's more than just a coaching matchup in this series. It's the systems and the offensive styles and just the style of coaching and the foundation that Popovich has built is the biggest mismatch going against Brooks, who the franchise is kind of really in flux now. And, I mean, they're the furthest away from, in my mind, a title contention as we've seen in a long time.
Barry, is it that big a coaching matchup, or is it more of a franchise matchup, and which could and should include tradition, experience, longevity? Is that all come to bear here, or is it just a straight up X's and O's coaching mismatch?
I don't think it's a coaching X's and O's mismatch of any kind. I mean, I don't think that whoever we want, Larry Brown or Phil Jackson, whoever anybody wants to label a great coach, I mean, I don't know what he'd do with this Thunder team at this point in time. When you lose Ibaka, you're just sort of struggling. If you want to get on Scotty Brooks for not having developed Russell Westbrook into playing more within himself on a full-time basis, maybe so, but having Russell play the way he has gotten the Thunder very far. So I'm even hard-pressed to criticize Brooks for that. I think it's just a case of the biggest problem I see in this series is Westbrook's got to play better. The Thunder can't beat the Spurs. Even with Ibaka, I don't think they could beat the Spurs if Tony Parker is getting the best of Russell Westbrook. The Thunder's got to win this point guard duel, and they're not coming close to winning it through 2 games.
But it is ugly when you watch one side of the court and it's, a lot of pounding in the dribble, and there's guys in the corner standing around, and nobody's really doing much. And then the other side, you just see swing. There's a bunch of off-ball movement. There's cross-court passes. Manu Ginobili's making wild passes. Danny Green's hitting everything. Everyone's getting open shots. And then you look, like I said, and there's such a stark contrast end to end. And that goes with the coaching and the offensive system.
Guys, there was a lot of talk before the series about the mismatch in the backcourt, Russell Westbrook, and how could Tony Parker possibly guard him, but also Reggie Jackson, who has averaged 20 points a game, I think, in 4 games against the Spurs. He's averaging, 11, and doesn't really seem to be much of a factor. How much does Reggie Jackson's lack of production impacting this series, and is there any hope that he can be resuscitated and gotten back on track? And is that the main guy the Thunder needs to rely on to get back in a win column?
I don't think he's been that bad, to be honest. I think, what did he go last night? Probably like 4-6, 4-7. I thought he was okay last night. Steven Adams, I thought, was good off the bench. They're just not getting that many opportunities. Maybe he needs to be more aggressive in getting to the rim, but I think Reggie Jackson has been the furthest from their issue. Sure, he's not averaging 21 a game on 68% shooting, but I mean, there's a lot deeper issues than that on this team right now.
Barry, does a better Reggie Jackson do it for the Thunder?
No, because I think he's done okay. He hadn't played great, but he's played good. He's one of the few Thunders that have, you sort of can say, hey, he's playing pretty close to what he ought to. Clearly, the Spurs are playing excellent team defense. Of that, there can be no doubt, both with Durant and Westbrook having very difficult times getting going. It's not just because they're missing shots. So they're playing that good team defense on everybody. Reggie's actually getting more done than most. I don't think he's the problem at all.
Guys, as we go to Game 3, what would you do if you were Scott Brooks? What's the thing that you would do more of that you haven't seen in 2 games in San Antonio? We'll start with you, Anthony.
All right, you guys ready for a radical idea? I threw it out on the podcast. Darnell didn't think it was that radical. I'd go super, super young and athletic. Because, if you think about it, as we've talked about on this podcast, this series in a way seems decided already. Thabo Sefolosha is not going to be back next year, it looks like. Derek Fisher still says he's probably going to retire. Caron Butler might not be back. Kendrick Perkins, he's still part of the future. I'd just go super young, super athletic, see if you can rejuvenate Russell Westbrook and Kevin Durant by putting a starting lineup of Westbrook, Jeremy Lamb, Perry Jones, Kevin Durant, and Steven Adams. You play Reggie Jackson a ton off the bench. You still filter in, Perk, Collison, maybe a little Butler and Fish. But you play all your young guys 30-something minutes. You run and gun. You're probably not going to win the series, but you're getting guys down the road who are supposed to be building blocks for this franchise. You're getting them valuable experience. You're maybe surprising the Spurs a little bit. maybe, you start getting some alley-oops and Westbrook and Durant starting to feel good again. And maybe, you don't win the series, but you change it, you win a couple games, and that's kind of my radical idea.
What do you think of it, Barry?
El Stinko de Maco. Jeremy Lamb hadn't guarded he's not guarding anybody. That's a good way to get beat 148 to 97.
You know what Jeremy Lamb's doing, though? Jeremy Lamb can hit a three once in a while. Thabo Sefolosha, who's not really guarding anybody anyways, is 11 of 47 since the All-Star break from three. Danny Green has 11 threes in the first two games of this series. He's not guarding anybody. There's no reason to have Thabo on the court.
Well,
Try Jeremy Lamb. Maybe he can hit a shot.
I'm not going to defend Thabo Sefolosha. However, I'd play Butler more or Fisher more or Reggie Jackson more. Heck, if you want to start somebody, I'd start Reggie. That's a good way to get younger and faster.
Yeah.
Jeremy Lamb's not the answer. You don't build for the future in the Western Conference Finals.
Well,
Getting somebody 2 games of experience is not worth it. I think more radical is I might start a small lineup. I like the idea of starting small. I'd just start small somewhere else. Last night, the small lineup actually played pretty decent. Through 3 quarters, it only got outscored 4 points over about 19 minutes. It was the big lineup that got torched. So I think the best Thunder lineup against the Spurs, and I don't know if you can start it or not, but is Durant at power forward and Steven Adams at center, and then whatever wing players you want to use, Westbrook, Jackson, and then whoever.
Guys, from the News OK Live page, there's some comments, and one of the comments really centers on the roster of the Thunder, really in some ways a criticism of the players they've added, talking about also-ran talent, and I think they're referring to Derek Fisher and Caron Butler, guys who don't look all that experienced and all that great in this series. What do you is this in any way become a referendum on the quality of the Thunder bench, Anthony?
A little bit, but Fisher had a good game one. Caron Butler was not bad last night. There's a lot of issues, and it's tough when they're going really against the deepest, best bench in the league. So, from a Thunder perspective, there's some referendum on what they're playing, but a lot of this goes back to just how the Spurs are playing, really.
Barry, you mentioned this.
I think the Thunder bench has been one of the good things in this series. The bench has actually played even with the Spurs bench.
It's the 3 starters that combined in 2 games have scored 9 points, which most NBA starters average double digits. 3 guys, 2 games, 9 points. That's a lot of it right there.
You can live with the starters not scoring. You can't live with them not playing defense. So the starting lineup's clearly been the problem.
Do you think that Brooks stays with his starting, more likely that he stays with his lineup or changes it for Game 3, Barry?
I think it's more likely he changes it. And, I know RFD earlier said he thinks Derek Fisher may start. And that would be interesting. We've already seen him start Caron Butler in the last 2 games against Memphis. So I think you're going to see a change. I really do.
I think he should really change it. Obviously, you just kind of heard that idea I had. I don't think he will. I think Thunder. I don't think he's going to play. I think he's going to get replaced, and I don't think he'll even play in the rest of the series. And I think he'll replace him with Caron Butler because it's kind of we did that in the Memphis series. It worked. I think that's the only change he'll make is Caron Butler.
Finally, guys, the great Willis Reed once told Barry and I while sitting over at SNU watching the Hornets practice, he talked about role players, talked about young teams, and talked about the energy that they get from playing at home and the lift they get from being in that kind of situation. Is it possible that that's really all the Thunder, or that's going to be enough to boost the Thunder in Game 3?
They can't just rely on that. I assume they're going to get more energy. You'd like to think the role players will play a little bit better. You really need the stars to play a lot better, to play a lot more energized. Durant and Westbrook need to be way better. But like I said, they can't just think, hey, we're home, and that's going to happen because the Spurs are going to come out playing well. They did this last round. They went into Portland and then smacked the Blazers in Game 3 after winning the first 2. So I will almost guarantee the Spurs are going to be favored in the game, and most people would pick them.
Barry, how about the lift from the home crowd, and even including for Durant and Westbrook?
I mean, I think it's possible that the Thunder could rally and win in Oklahoma City. I think it's going to be a tall order to win twice, but I mean, I think Thunder will get a big lift, and I think AC's right. The key is Durant and Westbrook. Durant and Westbrook both played poorly, which I think they did last night. It doesn't matter what everybody else does. Those two guys have to play well to win. If only one plays well, the Spurs probably win a game. But if both play well, then I think you'll see a Thunder victory.
Thanks, guys. That's all for this edition of Thunder Thursday on News OK Live. But you can stay with the best coverage team every day at News OK, and every morning in the Oklahoma. And remember, Thunder Thursdays are brought to you by our good friends at Wheeler Chevrolet. Take that drive down I-40, save yourself some time and money.